Cities, as we know very well, never truly sleep. As the sun goes down in our very own, we've all witnessed bars start to buzz, venues start to open, and late-night eateries reach their peak business hours. From the Plateau to Griffintown, vibrant neighborhoods begin to transform into hubs of nightlife. The concept of the 24-hour city is about how urban spaces remain active around the clock. At its core, this concept promises inclusivity and accessibility, but as Matthew Carmona critiques, it often exposes significant challenges. On one hand, it contributes to a city's cultural identity and economic sector. On the other hand, it amplifies challenges such as pollution, gentrification, and uneven access. These issues provoke critical questions about control and equity. Who truly owns the night, and whose voices are prioritized in shaping these spaces? Montreal offers a rich nightlife, renowned for its music festivals, late-night venues, and house techno scene. In this exploration, we'll find out just how Montreal's nightlife exemplifies the broader challenges of the 24-hour city.
As cities promote their nightlife, the influx of new residents and tourists can lead to the indirect displacement of long-standing residents by altering the socio-cultural fabric of neighborhoods. In Lisbon, researchers have observed the gentrification of nightlife, where vintage aesthetics cater to wealthier clientele. This transformation often ostracizes long-term residents who find themselves priced out of their own neighborhoods. Montreal's mayor, Valérie Plante, has proposed a plan to unveil so-called nocturnal zones. These areas will allow businesses like bars and clubs to stay open for 24 hours. Neighborhoods like this one, Quartier Latin, will potentially be advertised by the city as designated nightlife hubs. The goal of the project is to further cement Montreal as a global nightlife destination and attract even more visitors and newcomers. This plan acknowledges the issue of cohabitation, aiming to balance the interest of nightlife venues and residents in nearby neighborhoods. But will it address the deeper challenges of gentrification and displacement? The rise of the 24-hour city brings opportunities for economic growth and cultural vibrancy, but it also raises important questions. How can cities like Montreal embrace their nightlife while preserving the identities of their neighborhoods? And who ultimately gets to enjoy these spaces?
So the overarching question we're trying to answer is who owns the city at night? Recent bylaw changes proposed in Montreal aim to protect nightlife venues like Turbo House from noise complaints. This follows Tulip's closure as a result of these complaints. But Montreal announced investment in soundproofing for these venues, which gets to the question of, does this actually address the root of the problem, or does it just help the so-called not in my backyard residents who want quieter neighborhoods?
One of our neighbors never complains, but the other one was like, I don't know, I guess it's a Monday.
These so-called NIMBYs have more political, economic, and social influence to actually propose policies for the city, and customers and businesses may not have as much access to those resources. Who's responsible for the neighborhoods at night? Is it businesses like Turbo House who have expressed concerns about these noise complaints and are just trying to make a living? Or is it customers who, as Carmona notes, can sometimes not take responsibility for the neighborhoods that they're going to at night because they don't feel a connection to them? Or is it the residents who are just trying to sleep and relax, but also do live in neighborhoods that have this noise?
With the immediate concerns of residents, building owners, and developers versus partygoers and business owners in mind, is it better to repress or accommodate nightlife? In Montreal, who decides and who benefits from infrastructure that allegedly redresses the refuse of nightlife?
Also within Mayor Plante's recent plan was to allocate $5.5 million towards revitalization and reinforcement of Montreal's nightlife, with the only specific infrastructural change outlined being $2.5 million directed towards soundproofing grants for small venues. This comes in light of La Tulip's closure due to not being able to afford legally mandated soundproofing infrastructure. Soundproofing initiatives like these appear to adjust to the reality of zoning failures and increase mixed-use development, but Turbo House's owner Sergio De Silva says that they are useless.
Retrofitting a 100-year-old building like La Tulip, retrofitting a 100-year-old building like this one to be soundproof, to, again, conform to the rules that are currently on the books is a laughable objective. It's not going to happen. You speak to anybody who studies sound installation, they'll tell you immediately the way sound travels, the way all this works, it's impossible. You might as well be throwing that money directly into the garbage. It's not going to work. Have better ideas. It's like soundproofing is something you tell people who don't know what they're talking about, and it's like a magic bullet solution. And then everybody's like, well, we gave them money to do this, and they still didn't take it, and it still didn't work. Yeah, of course not, because that's not how this fucking works.
Considering the city imposes these unrealistic noise regulations on venues in the first place, their promises of soundproofing grants end up being offensive, uninformed, and ineffective pacifiers instead.
To understand how the city space in Montreal is actually used at night, We looked at a smaller scale for physical traces, in particular byproducts of use, along with the infrastructure that does or doesn't exist to mitigate it. Besides noise, the top immediate byproducts of nightlife we observed were cigarette butts and empty cans. Most residents seem to just accept this as part of city life, but actions and measures have been taken to reduce the visibility of this waste. In the Plateau and downtown Montreal, two areas with arguably the highest concentration of nightlife, the city has installed participatory waste bins, which are those public trash cans with an outer ring meant for empty cans and bottles. This small detail helps reduce the littering of recyclable materials twofold by making it easy to direct drinkers towards proper disposal and also for collectors or binners to pick them up without having to rummage through or upturn anything.
More widely installed are cigarette receptacles in a variety of locations, configurations, and levels of formality. The cigarette receptacles that are mounted on lampposts are usually installed by the city, but it's debatable how well maintained these are. Regardless, businesses and individuals come up with their own solutions to the abundance of cigarette butts in Montreal.
Having explored the perspectives of city officials, business owners, and nightlife participants through a variety of methods, we found that the government lets policies be manipulated in the interests of those who will make them or cost them the most money, although this demographic is always changing. As mostly transient students in Montreal, it's easy for us to side with the demands of the nightlife industry, but one day we could be parents struggling to raise a family in an urban environment. So ultimately, the night belongs not only to one group, and these competing interests can reveal the complexities that go into urban governance.